Renewable power generation company Lekela recently announced a successful financial close on its Taiba N'Diaye wind projects in Senegal. Massaer Cisse, Lekela's general manager for Senegal, joined me to discuss how this will impact the renewable energy drive in Senegal. Take a look.
The renewable energy sector is becoming more and more important for African countries in their quest to increase access to power across the continental population. As of now, it's still in the starting phase, but it's becoming more and more important, and has an abundant source of energy. I think is one of the best ways for Africa to achieve energy independence.
Now, even though it's cost effective, compared to other sources of energy, what we hear many times is that funding remains a major issue. Experts tell us that Africa, for such projects, Africa needs long-term patient capital to come in to fund these projects. What is your perspective?
That is a very good point, Esther. It's true that funding can be a pretty high hurdle when it comes to putting this project together. However, the opportunities are very, very interesting on the continent, both for investors and for governments. I think what's required is patience on both sides. Usually these investors or the capital flowing into this project has a pretty long-term prospect, 10 to 20 years. Now, what the governments need to do is to make sure that the regulatory environments are attractive enough for this investment to flow into the country.
Would you say that there's some countries on the African continent that are taking the lead when it comes to deploying successfully and at low cost renewable energy mix?
There are a few countries that are taking the lead or that are playing the trailblazers when it comes to this sector. I think South Africa and Kenya and now next Senegal can be put in that basket. But at the same time, there are many, many other countries that are looking at this with a very careful eye, and in my opinion, and in our opinion, things will heat up very quickly.
Okay, let's go straight into the project that you are focusing on in Senegal. That's the Taiba N'Diaye project to deliver 158.7 megawatts of clean, reliable and, of course, renewable energy, and is the first utility-scale wind farm in Senegal. Tell us about this project.
Sure. So, first of all, let me just tell you quickly about our company. So, Lekela is a clean energy investment platform. So, we are mainly focused on developing large-scale, utility-scale energy projects across Africa. As of now, we are active in Senegal, in South Africa, in Egypt, and other countries that are in development. For the specific case of Senegal, as you mentioned, we just closed the financial funding of this project, and it will supply 158 megawatts of clean and reliable energy to the Senegalese government. Now, this is a very big step because Senegal's government has been known to have a pretty aggressive target to increase the part of renewable energy in their local energy mix. They have a 20% target, and I think with our project, they will be very close to that target.
Well, talk to us about the lifespan of this project, and when would you be able to fully deploy it to the communities that you're targeting?
Sure. So the construction on the project itself will start this month, and then it will last about 2 years. The first megawatt will be in the grid about a year from now. So construction happens in phases, and the last phase will be completed. So the full capacity will be available to the grid in about 2 years' time.
Now, as an investor, could you just, give us a sense of what it was like putting this project together, talking with the government, and of course, issues of funding, how you were able to put this together?
Sure. So as we talked about earlier, at the same time that these projects or the sector is very exciting and with a lot of opportunity in Africa, there are also many challenges and hurdles that we are facing as investors, especially when it comes to foreign investors. Now, the financing itself is not easy, but it is not the biggest hurdle. There's, I think, a lot of money to go around to invest in this project. the highest hurdles we face are actually from the regulatory environment in these countries that are not always in sync with what's needed to attract these investments. So for this specific case, we had to work really hard with the government and with all stakeholders, whether local and foreign, our investment partners such as OPIC or EKF, OPIC being the US government's private investment company, and EKF being the Danish government's export promotion company. We had to work with those partners and the local governments really hard to make sure that our investments are made in a regulatory environment that's beneficial to both parties. And I think this is a good example for the other countries has what to do and how to do it in order to bring these much needed investments.
Now, obviously, the right regulatory environment, as you've pointed out several times, is quite key. And luckily for you, I guess the government of Senegal was listened and was able to get that right. But do you think that for other investors who are looking or eyeing other parts of the African continent where they know that the energy mix is needed, is critically needed, do you think that perhaps they need a different approach to speaking to the government on the issue of ensuring that the regulatory environment, like you said, is in sync with their needs or investment needs?
Sure. So in my opinion, in our opinion, the way to go about this is to talk with governments, make sure we understand the needs. And I think the urgent need, the urgent power need is really, really felt across the continent. Over half of Africa's population don't have access to reliable power. And that's a big problem. That's a big problem for this population, but also for those governments. So the way to approach these issues is to make sure the bigger picture, which is providing reliable and cheaper energy, is the key. Now, what's needed from the government perspective is two things: having a stable, reliable regulatory environment and being seen as a partner. At the end of the day, these projects are seen as partnerships between the communities that we invest in, ourselves, and the local governments.
Now, for this wind farm you're building in Senegal, is this a first of others to come, or this is just going to be a one-off with the Senegalese government?
Well, for now, this will be the first utility-scale wind farm in Senegal, but not only in Senegal, but in West Africa. So we see this as a first of many to come, hopefully, whether in Senegal or other countries in the region.
I know that you have other projects in places like Ghana, Egypt, and South Africa. Talk to us about these projects briefly.
Sure. So Lekela is a Pan-African investment company. So as you mentioned, we have current projects, whether in development or actually in operations in Egypt, Ghana, South Africa, and other countries in the pipeline. Now, we have a pretty standard way of doing these transactions. We are investing in communities. We invest as partners with those local governments. And I think in all of those countries that we are investing in, the same result is what we are going after, providing cheap and reliable source of energy for the local population.
Speaking about the communities that you're focusing on, you've also started an extensive social investment program. You're hoping that this will create jobs, and you're willing to put on the table as initial investment up to $20 million US. Give us more insight on that.
One key aspect of our investment approach is to make sure that we have a positive value added to our communities in which we are investing in and in which we really become part of. So beside the job opportunities brought in by our plants, the wind and solar plants themselves, we work with the local communities to make sure that we can help them strengthen their regular sources of income. In the case of Taiba, for this project in Senegal, we are working with the local community to strengthen their agricultural process so that not only we are bringing jobs with our plants, but we are also accompanying the local communities in making sure their regular source of income is actually strengthened and can have a positive value added.
Now, while Africa is looking to diversify its energy mix and, of course, provide electricity in many parts, in many instances for the first time to certain communities in rural areas, I've also heard experts or players in the gas industry talk about how they see gas working hand in hand with renewable energy. That gas, we shouldn't leave gas out, and that can also be a key factor in the whole mix. What are your thoughts on that?
That is a good point. I think at the end of the day, when we think of energy, we have to think of mix. Each country will be different. Access to the source of those energy is not the same across countries. But at the end of the day, what we have to keep in mind is getting the mix right, whether it's gas, hopefully more and more renewable, and other sources of energy. So what's important to me is each country needs to get the mix right. If access to gas is an option, it has to be part of the mix. But hopefully the renewable portion of it will be higher and higher as we go along, just because of its natural positive aspects, not only the price, but also the impact on the environment. For example, this project in Senegal will be saving 300,000 tons of CO2 a year. So that is not a small factor. So getting the mix right is important, but also making sure the portion of renewable is higher.
That was Massaer Cisse, Lekela's General Manager for Senegal.